Last Thursday, the 11th of June, the United States declared El Niño officially here, weeks ahead of the usual schedule. That early arrival is the warning. It means the Pacific is warming faster than the models predicted, and the same ocean that just broke records is the single biggest lever on America's weather. In the next 20 minutes, I'll show you exactly how strong this could get, why the forecast already favors the rare, destructive tier, and what it's about to do to the United States this hurricane season and this winter. The United States government just confirmed what the Pacific Ocean has been screaming for the past week. Last Thursday, the 11th of June, NOAA upgraded its El Niño watch to a full El Niño advisory. In plain language, that means El Niño is no longer a forecast. It is here, it is official, and it arrived weeks ahead of schedule. And that early arrival is the first sign that this event is not behaving the way it is supposed to. Here is why the timing matters. In a normal year, forecasters spend the spring hedging, waiting, watching the ocean wobble near the threshold, and they usually do not make it official until late summer or early autumn. This year they did not wait because the ocean did not wait. By the middle of June, the signal was so strong and so clear that the agency stopped hedging and made the call. Forecasters have described this event, in their own words, as developing earlier and faster than most events on record. We told you back in late April that the models were pointing toward a possible record strength El Niño for 2026. That was the forecast. What you're watching now is the confirmation, and the confirmation came in hotter and earlier than the forecast did. The Pacific is breaking records right now. The official advisory is out and the event has not even started to peak. That peak does not come until the late autumn and the winter, which means everything happening right now is just the opening. And the reason this lands on your doorstep, the reason scientists are warning that America is next, is that the temperature of this one stretch of ocean is the single biggest lever on weather across the planet, including the country you're watching from. When that lever moves, it moves hurricane seasons, it moves droughts, it moves which parts of the country flood and which parts burn. It just moved hard and early. Let me show you exactly what the ocean did. The central equatorial Pacific has been setting new daily temperature records, and it did not do it once. It did it 5 days in a row. Each day over the past week, that stretch of ocean broke its own record for the date, then climbed higher and broke it again. When scientists line this year up against every other year in the modern record, a record that reaches all the way back to 1940, this year is sitting on top of all of them. Not near the top. On top, in June, more than 80 years of data underneath it. A daily record in the ocean is not like a hot afternoon in your town. The ocean is the slow, heavy part of the climate system. It takes an enormous amount of energy to move it, which is exactly why it normally changes slowly and predictably. So when a region of that ocean breaks its record 5 days running, you are not watching a small wobble. You are watching the heaviest part of the climate system get pushed hard, fast enough to keep setting new records day after day. What is doing the pushing is the wind. A burst of westerly wind along the equator, one of the strongest ever measured in that part of the world, has been shoving warm water eastward and feeding more heat into the same region the records are coming from. Normally, the atmosphere is slow to respond during an event like this. This time, the wind is driving the ocean hard and early, which is part of why the warming has run ahead of what the models drew. And the records are not coming from one isolated stripe of water. There is a marine heat wave, a band of abnormally warm ocean that now stretches from the islands of the South Pacific all the way up to the coast of Southern California, merging with the warm signature off Peru. A marine heat wave is exactly what it sounds like, a heat wave in the ocean instead of the air, and it stresses sea life, shifts the fish that coastal towns depend on, and primes the coastlines it touches. The fact that this event is sitting inside that much record warm water, reaching all the way to North America, is part of why its effects are already showing up so early and so far from the equator. The people who do this for a living are not bored by this. These are the cautious institutions, the ones whose entire job is to avoid overstatement, and they have started describing the trajectory with a phrase they almost never use. Off the charts. They mean it literally. The line has climbed off the top of the range they normally plot. And when the cautious people run out of cautious words, that is the moment to pay attention. So let me give you the hard numbers, because this is where it gets serious. Scientists do not track the whole Pacific as one number. They watch specific regions, and 2 of them tell this story. There is a region in the far eastern Pacific, off the coast of South America, and a larger region out in the central Pacific that the official index is built on. Start with the eastern one, because it is the most extreme reading on the board. That water is currently running about 2.1 degrees Celsius above normal. 2 degrees of ocean may not sound like much, so let me put it in perspective. We're not talking about the air. We are talking about the average temperature of a region of ocean, the size of a country, lifted more than 2 degrees above where it should be. And here is the part that should stop you. As recently as the second week of May, that same region was sitting closer to 7/10 of 1 degree above normal. So in about 5 weeks, it more than tripled. That is not a drift. That is a sprint in the part of the system that is supposed to move the slowest. Now the central region, the one that defines the official record. On a week-to-week basis, that water has already crossed the line that defines El Niño, and it is still climbing. The headline index, the one that writes a year into the record books, is a 3-month average, and right now it sits at about 0.48 of a degree, just under the official threshold, because that average still includes the cooler early spring. The live data is already well past the line, which is exactly why the advisory came out when it did. And to feel how fast this turned, look at where it started. Last autumn, that same official index was negative. It was on the cool side, the opposite phase. From that cold start, season by season, it climbed about a full degree to where it is now. The ocean came off the cold side of the board, drove straight through neutral and out the warm side in less than a year. That is the speed scientists keep pointing to. And the forecast for where it goes next is the part that puts a real warning on the table. Forecasters now put the odds that this becomes a very strong El Niño at about 63%. A very strong event is the top tier, the rare category, the one that peaks above 2 full degrees and rewrites a year of weather across the planet. More likely than not, by the central forecast, we are heading for one of the strongest El Niño events ever measured. And the most aggressive of the world's major models is pointing even higher, toward a peak near 3 degrees above normal by December. To understand why 3 degrees makes scientists go quiet, line it up against the monsters of the past. The great El Niño of 1997 and 98 peaked around 2.4 degrees. The giant of 2015 and 16 peaked around 2.6. The powerful event of 1982 and 83 peaked around 2.2. Those are the benchmarks, the events that caused tens of billions of dollars in damage, drove droughts and floods across continents, and are still studied as textbook cases. A peak near 3 degrees would not match them. It would stand above every one of them in the modern record. And those benchmark events were not just big numbers on a chart. The El Niño of 2015 and 16 pushed tens of millions of people into food shortages across Africa, Asia, and Central America, and drove the worst global coral die-off ever recorded at the time. The event of 1997 and 98 drove deadly floods and landslides across the Americas and stoked enormous wildfires on the far side of the Pacific. Those are the consequences a top-tier event delivers, and they peaked below where the central forecast now points for this one. So when forecasters say this event could rank with them or beyond, they are not reaching for drama. They are telling you the company it is keeping. Now, I want to be straight with you, because this channel runs on real data and not on hype. That 63% is a probability, not a guarantee. The 3-degree projection is the aggressive end of the model range, not the consensus center. El Niño events have faded after strong starts before, so the honest range runs from a strong event at the low end up to a record breaker at the high end. But notice what that means. Even the cautious central estimate already favors the rare and destructive tier. When the careful forecast is more likely than not to produce a giant, the optimistic case is not exactly comforting either. So put it together. The records are falling now. The advisory came early. The ocean swung a full degree in under a year, and the forecast for the peak, months from now, already favors the strongest category there is. Every one of those facts points the same direction, and it is not just hot. It is fast, and it is ahead of the models, which raises the obvious question, and it is not a comfortable one. If this event is running hotter and earlier than the models predicted, then the models got something wrong. Not uselessly wrong, but wrong in a specific way that matters. They undershot. And when the best forecasting tools we have undershoot the opening of the largest climate event on the planet, that tells you something. So let me explain what they missed, because the answer is more interesting than just saying the computers were off. The first thing they missed is the wind. That record-strong westerly wind burst is the kind of thing models struggle to predict more than a couple of weeks out. It is weather riding on top of the slower climate signal, and a harder shove than expected means faster warming than expected. That is part of what we are watching. The second thing is the heat already loaded below the surface. There's a large reservoir of warm water sitting just under the surface, staged to come up over the coming months, which is why forecasters expect the warming to continue rather than back off. But the third reason is the one that does not go away when this event ends. This El Niño is forming on the warmest ocean we have ever measured. Every past event happened on a cooler planet. This one is rearranging water that was already warmer to begin with, So the same push produces a bigger number because the starting line is higher. The models know about that warmer baseline, but capturing exactly how it interacts with the wind and the subsurface heat is right at the edge of what they do well. Here is why that matters beyond the forecast. El Niño does not keep its heat to itself. It releases stored ocean heat into the atmosphere over the following months, which makes it the single biggest natural driver of year-to-year global temperature. We watched the last El Niño help push global temperatures to record highs that surprised even the scientists. A 2026 event that starts early and fast front loads that release, which means the sharpest jump in global temperature could come sooner rather than later. And the place all of this stops being abstract is a coastline, so let me bring it home. The first thing this record warm ocean is doing to America is already happening, and it is happening on the Gulf Coast. Yesterday, the National Weather Service put 4 words into an official flood watch over the Texas coast that you do not want to read in a forecast. Potential for life-threatening flash flooding. Overnight, the first rounds of storms moved through, and emergency managers along the South Texas border reported water rescues and evacuations. This is not a forecast for next week. This is the warm ocean cashing a check on an American coast right now. Here is how it connects. The reason the air over Texas can hold this much water is that the world and the Gulf feeding that air is warmer than it used to be. A warmer atmosphere holds more moisture by a fixed physical rule, and right now the amount of moisture sitting over southeast Texas is near a record for the date, around 2.3 inches of what forecasters call precipitable water. That loaded atmosphere, combined with a stalled front, is why the official rainfall risk is at level 3 of 4, with rates of 2 to 5 inches per hour possible. The same warmth-breaking records in the Pacific is the warmth loading the sky over Texas, and there's a second hook in the same setup. The National Hurricane Center is watching a system off northeastern Mexico for tropical development as it drifts toward the Texas coast, giving it about a 30% chance over the coming days. 30% is not high, but the fact that the Gulf is warm enough to even consider spinning up a storm this early tells you how much fuel is in that water. Flood warnings are already the single most common alert on the national map today, and Texas is not alone. Rivers are running high across a wide stretch of the middle of the country, with parts of the Guadalupe and the San Antonio and smaller rivers across south and central Texas forecast to reach moderate flood stage, the level where water leaves the channel and starts taking roads and fields. A second flood watch covers southeast Louisiana. So this is not a single bad afternoon in one city. It is a broad zone of saturated ground and swollen rivers from the Texas coast into the lower Mississippi Valley, all of it loaded by the same warm, moisture-heavy air, and all of it sitting under a pattern that keeps reloading day after day. So the Gulf this week is the near-term face of the story, the part you can see from your window. But an El Niño does not work in days. It works in seasons, and the seasonal forecast for the United States has a twist in it that almost everyone gets backward. And it gets stranger from here. You would assume a record-breaking El Niño means a monstrous Atlantic hurricane season, because warm water means hurricanes and everything is warm. But the Atlantic does not work that way under a strong El Niño, and this is the part worth understanding. When the Pacific warms and the storms shift toward the central Pacific, they strengthen the high-altitude winds over the Atlantic, the winds that tear developing hurricanes apart before they can organize. So a strong El Niño usually acts as a brake on the Atlantic season later in the year, not an accelerator. That does not mean the coast is safe, and I want to be careful here. The brake is a season-long tendency, not a guarantee for any single storm. The warm Gulf can still spin up a dangerous homegrown system close to shore, exactly like the setup threatening Texas right now, and a storm that forms over water this warm can intensify fast. So, the honest summary is a split. Fewer Atlantic storms overall is likely, but the ones that break through can be vicious, and the Gulf stays loaded. While the Atlantic gets a break, the Eastern Pacific gets the opposite. That basin has already produced multiple named storms this year, reaching the letter C, and warmer water plus weakening wind shear from Baja toward Acapulco is the recipe for stronger systems and rapid intensification in the weeks ahead. The same ocean signal is muzzling one basin and feeding the other. At the same time, the southwest monsoon is just beginning its season into this reorganized Pacific, and the west coast is sitting against a marine heat wave with swells of 9 to 15 feet already hitting the Hawaiian and California coasts. That phrase, rapid intensification, is the part that has changed the math of hurricane risk over the last decade. The old picture of a hurricane was a storm that built slowly over days, giving the coast time to prepare. Over very warm water, that picture breaks. A storm can find more fuel than it can burn and jump 30, 40, even 50 miles per hour in its winds in a single day, sometimes in the last day before landfall, when there is the least time left to get out. The warm water and weakening shear lining up in the eastern Pacific right now are exactly the conditions that make those jumps possible, which is why the next storms off Mexico could be a very different animal than the early ones. By winter, if this event reaches the strong tier the forecast favors, the classic pattern aims a parade of storms at California, raising the risk of atmospheric rivers and flooding, and tilts the southern tier of the country wetter and stormier, while the north runs milder and drier. Every one of those outcomes traces straight back to the temperature of the water we started with. But America is not the only place reading out this signal right now, and the next piece of evidence is on the other side of the world. While the Pacific breaks records and the Gulf floods, Western and Central Europe are sliding into a dangerous heat wave. Forecast temperatures are climbing above 30 degrees Celsius across broad areas, above 35 in the hottest regions, and approaching 40 degrees in places, which is over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The most dangerous detail is not the afternoons. It is that across parts of southern Europe, the overnight lows are not expected to drop below 30 degrees for an extended stretch. And heat that never lets go at night is how the deadliest heat events do their damage. I want to be precise about the connection, because it is easy to overstate. The European heat wave is not caused by the Pacific in a direct line. It is driven by its own stuck weather pattern over the Atlantic. But it is part of the same condition, a planet whose oceans and air are carrying more heat than they used to, so every stuck pattern that forms has hotter air to work with. Europe today, North America breaking its own heat records, the Central Pacific, all month. 3 continents, 3 local causes, 1 warming background underneath all of them. That is why this matters to the story. It would be easy to file a record in the middle of the Pacific as a faraway problem. But when the heat shows up on multiple continents at once, you are not looking at a scatter of unrelated events. You are looking at the surface of one shift, and the loudest single driver underneath it is the temperature of the Pacific. Europe is the corroboration you can see. So the question now is simple. If this is the opening, what comes next? The honest answer is that this is going to be a consequential year, and the readout is going to come in stages. The peak of this El Niño does not arrive until the late autumn and the winter, which means everything we have covered today, every record, every early advisory, is the beginning, not the climax. The ocean has not shown us its top yet, and it has the entire back half of the year to press on the hurricane seasons, the monsoon, and the winter storm track. Here is what to watch in order. First, watch the official 3-month index over the coming months and see whether it keeps climbing toward and past the very strong line of 2 degrees. Second, watch the eastern Pacific off Mexico and see whether the next storms stay weak or start making the explosive jumps that warm water allows. Third, watch the Gulf this week, where the threat is live right now. And by winter, watch California for the parade of storms a strong event tends to bring. Hold 2 things in mind as you watch. This is real and large and already here, with the advisory issued, the records falling, and the central forecast favoring a top-tier event. But it is not certain because the peak is a probability, not a promise, and these events have faded before. The truth is in the middle, where the danger is serious and the certainty is not total, and the right move is to watch with the facts in front of you. We will be tracking the index, the Gulf, and the Eastern Pacific as this develops, and we will tell you the moment any of them takes the next step. The Pacific is breaking records faster than the models predicted. The official warning is out, and the part that hits America is only getting started.